Welcome to back. This is my first English video. In this video, or English video, I speak of the figures of dietitians. What is dietitian? Dietitian is the figure, normally in a degree figure, with the first degree figures. We have a degree in a dietetic science. Dietetic science is also a perfect and imperfect science. For suppose to study a diet. Normally diet in Italy is a Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet excursus of vegetables, fruit to consume in another meal for a breakfast, lunch or a dinner, exemplificati. But now Mediterranean diet is not only to consume in a perfect typical lunch meal or a dinner or a breakfast, it's the lifestyles. On the example of part of the dietitians with concept of this work or another country, and normally specifically styles in the UK, the figures of the dietitians is very particular, is a different part of the course of the study, not similar in Italy, but different part of course the study is simplificately of 1 years ago plus differently to Italy, because in the different part of the plus one years consumed with practicals clinicals. The normally practical clinicals is in a hospital for the dietitians, but if you have a part or any part of time of this professional study and the work, another of in a clinical part, or another for exemplificatory in the ambulatory, an example of a private class. Normally you have the dietitians of the city because of a medical basis. Dietitian of the city or a dietitian of the country, and normally the dietitian to supposed to start for studying the populations and to consequently to set the populations for normally principle of basic of nutrition. And in this part to consequently of the citations of the nutrition care process. The nutrition care process is not only a simplificate a module of studying of the dietitian and application of these rules, but the nutrition care process is a methodic and a frame of the work to have any professional dietitian or another nutritional professionist. You have to studying and you have to approach this in this country or another sample in this relationship with your patient care. In the nutritional care studies or nutritional care approaches, to have an approach in a clinical effect. In a clinical, nutritional care approaches are approaches of another therapy, pharmacological, for example, or physician therapy, or another therapy to concept of the remove the pathology. You have a patient, or remove totally of an typical conditions of the mental condition, for example, in a psychiatry. You have studies, for example, of another type of an alternative mode. We have an example anorexia, bulimia, with a typical disturbed of the food and the typical food of the alimentazione. In Italy, disturbi del comportamento alimentare. In this part, the studies of nutritional care approaches of the mental health and a mental coach in this illness psychiatry is not totally mental coach, but is a psychiatry. The mental psychiatry is approaches of the nutritional care approaches with a dietitian or another dietology clinical for remove these illnesses. Not only we have a consumption of the body, but now in a mental psychiatry you have a constrictory and consequently another part of the body, because the result of this illness is not totally present of the in a body. We have a consequently to have restricted diet, but consequently is the brain. In this brain is the case of a result of typical disturb alimentary. Another part of the nutritional care approaches, you have an approaches, and normally in the world is the study the populations, and in the study the populations we have another type of illnesses. And now in the 21st century, another typical we have illnesses is obesity. obesity is another part of illnesses. We consequently have another illnesses or diseases. We have an example of diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, bones. You have a problem in the bones. Of the bones, we have more and more weight in this death with the obesity, because the fat mass, you have a bone carrick in these articulations, and you have a problems. You have a movement, you have particularly have a mental problem, because the figures is not typically similar at a model of Victoria's Secret, but you have normally a whale, for my joke, and this whale does not have any mobility or flexibility, but you have any problems internal body, mental problems, cardiovascular diseases, liver problem, respiratory problem, because you have a more fat mass. You have a difficulty for the muscle respiratory. You have an example of inspiration and aspirations. And normally that is a particular approach of your free fat mass. You have a more incremental with fat-free mass, respectively of the fat mass, normally the diet. The diet consists in a hypocaloric diet normally. If you have not another diseases or illnesses, because you have a disease or illnesses with association of obesity, you have continuously a pharmacological therapy. A pharmacological therapy is another type of pharmacological therapy basis. Pharmacological therapy of basis normally concerns of a reducting in a nervous system. We have a concept, the consequences, you have an increase, for example, the heat, hungry, and you concern of a job of this molecular, in this pharmacological approach. You have an example of reduce on this movement of the normally nervous synapse, because it concerns with nervous synapses to connect and conceive and increase the heat. An association of pharmacological therapy, you have an association of diet and change the lifestyle habits. For example, you have normally of the sport or approaches in exercises without clinical therapy, because in approaches of normally of medical sportive or medical coach, with associations of dietitian or dietology, you have an approach and concept of the result final to catch with the verify and lose fat mass. Because with a lose fat mass, you have a more and increase, more the result is as good. Because improve cardiovascular system, improves the bones, improves normally the mental health. Because they improve the mental health, you're gonna have a more happy man or happy woman. And you can search in this world for you my figures, because you have a low fat mass. I'm more happy for me and for you, and increase my therapy, or for example my mental health, increase more and more. No, so now the dietitian figures is normally a very more important figure present in Italy normally, but you have a normative and differently in other countries. For example, in England, for example, in USA, and there are more and more adventure of dietitian, normally dietista in Italy, or dietology, dietologo, or clinical dietology of nutrizionista. And so more and more important of the adventure, because the adventure of dietitian is discover the correct diet in the world. Thank you so much. This is my first dietitian video, totally in English, and because I hope you have know and knew my English, so you have an IBC certificate, another my master degree, master magistral degree, and more my another consequence, my new check the obiettivo, scusatemi, ogni tanto non riesco a ricordarmi bene tutte le parti in inglese, so sorry, my new having a catch with my prize is a certificate of C-SHU in English, and I hope you have a certificate of Wall Street English in Milan. It's very good. Taac!